briefly reflect on Judy's memoir by way of this introduction. Judy's great skill is a truth teller. She is a talented investigator and a reporter in an honest, straightforward manner, which is easy to understand. This memoir employs the same honest truth-telling skills, but something transformative happens in the telling. This is a personal, intimate account of her life. She, the journalist, who has always given voice to others, has skillfully and painfully given voice to the trauma she experienced as a child and her journey to speak difficult truths. She has masterfully taught us not only about herself, but about ourselves. Through her account, we can learn about the power of forgiveness, the power of reconciling our past and creating our future, which is full of possibilities. I was honored to read her memoir. I was spellbound by her words, her honesty, her ability to weave a story as she reconciled her past, shared her pain, her challenges, and her triumphs. This memoir's genesis, created in trauma, became for me, and I believe will become for all of us, a memoir of hope and of what is possible. The ancient sages were right. Acquire yourself a teacher and find yourself a friend. In Judy, I have both, and I know you will as well. I pray that for each of us, we find that no matter our journey of challenges and victories along its path, in the coming weeks and months, we experience the power of hope. This memoir, Let the More Loving One Be Me, will surely help us on our journey.
Here in the Swiss Alps, high above the little town of Zermatt, the snow was sparkling, the air crisp. It was cold at this altitude, 7,000 feet. But here, unlike in dreary Boston, the cold felt invigorating, cheery even. He was 74 now, the age that Tom had been when he died 9 years ago. After Tom, my previous husband, died, I opened a letter he had written to me a year earlier. At that point, neither of us, of course, could have known how long he had, and he wanted to be sure to record his thoughts while he could. In it, he told me how much he loved me and gave me his blessing to remarry if I had the chance. That blessing was the greatest gift I ever had, the most generous of presents, the love of one good man encouraging me to find another. Today, as always, Ken was so very present, this living gift that Tom's generosity had allowed. Different as they seemed on the surface, Tom was a quiet introvert, Ken a voluble extrovert, but both more Buddhist in their thoughts and meditation practices. They are similarly caring, though Ken, perhaps because he's a shrink, understood me better than anyone ever has. So now, after lunch in the sunny restaurant watching the skiers, we reluctantly headed down the trail again. By now it was mid-afternoon, but the sun was still strong. The Matterhorn still rising majestically in front of us, Zermatt still far enough below us to give us plenty of time to get back before dark. We walked along in silence, accompanied only by the sound of our boots and poles squeaking in the snow, our two rhythms now one. Ken, he stopped on the trail to face me. A line from a poem just popped into my head. I think it's by W.H. Auden. What is it? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. We looked at each other, stunned by the wisdom of these few words, our eyes filled with tears. That's like a marital vow, he said, gathering me in his arms. It is, I answered. Let the more loving one be me. No, he said, burying his head in my neck. Let the more loving one be me. It was an inauspicious start to a journalism career. I was 17. So was everybody else, except the long-suffering crew crammed aboard the SS Seven Seas. The Seven Seas, widely rumored to be condemned as unseaworthy, was carrying 700 of us American Field Service students all, heading home from a summer living with European host families. We were happy, considerably fatter than we had been when we left the U.S. 3 months earlier, and full of newly discovered sophistication. We boarded the ship through the gangway, and still carrying our bags, stopped to see the bulletin board, jostling to read the dozens of handwritten signs. Editor needed for daily shipboard newspaper, read one. I could do that, I thought, but I was a girl, and girls were not editors, or so I assumed. I had written a few saccharine letters from Denmark to my hometown paper, the Pelham Sun, raving about the pastries and my host family, and offering sophomoric insights into world affairs. I had also written for my high school newspaper more saccharine features about hunky football players and a fast track star we called the Flying Finn. So we wrote silly stuff, pieces about the food on board, we listed the scheduled shipboard activities, we reported on the weather, we wrote jokes about how rickety the ship seemed, and features about the countries we had visited. Bland but blissful. I had never been happier. I spent the days covered in mimeograph ink, thrilled to pass out our daily efforts and watch as people gathered in small groups to read them. I would hardly have called myself an investigative reporter, but about halfway through the trip, I stumbled upon a shocker. Some of the AFSers confided that they had become very friendly with the host nationals. Even the girls hinted that they had had sex with boys from the countries they visited. I was from Pelham, for heaven's sakes. Nobody had sex in Pelham. I went to church. I was in the choir. I was a bell ringer. I was a Girl Scout. I was a cheerleader. I didn't drink. I didn't swear. I more or less got straight A's. I was an AFS student. I was working for world peace. And they were having sex. I also had access to a mimeograph machine. So in the heat of passion,
Oh, no.
oh yes, I wrote an editorial fiercely lambasting my fellow students for tarnishing the image of AFS and Americans abroad. Who did they think they were? Messing around, breaking the rules, ruining our mission. We were the force for good, for purity. We were the youth of America, the future of the world. What were these kids thinking? Fueled by the outrage of the naive, I went on and on and on in what I assumed was a well-written, much-needed piece. Much to my relief, I no longer have a copy. When I ran out of steam, my co-editor read the editorial, didn't say much, picked a phrase from my piece and slapped it on as a headline, "The Lousy Few." I cranked up the mimeograph machine, handed out the copies, and went to dinner, aglow with righteous fervor. I was so right, they so wrong. The next morning, I tried to sneak back to the newsroom. People might know my name, but they didn't know my face. When I got to the dining room, I bumped into a huge parade of kids carrying a banner made from a bedsheet. "The Lousy Few," it proclaimed proudly. The students were having a ball. They shouted, they pumped their fists. They sang, "The Lousy Few, the Lousy Few." They also yelled that they were going to find and torture whoever had written that editorial. Mortified and stunned at the depth of my own naivety, I was also suddenly aware of a new feeling. I was ecstatic that people had actually read what I'd written. I was in awe. I could move people with my words. I skulked away from the demonstration, eventually making it back to the newsroom. "They actually read this stuff," I said to my co-editor. He shrugged. We vowed to keep putting out the paper for the rest of the trip. I kept faking seasickness whenever I was in the cabin, and never told my cabin mates I was the editor. I hid my purple ink-stained clothes. Today, more than 60 years, numerous journalism awards, and several books later, I'm still amazed that I can move people with my words and that I can have so much fun doing it. There are so many unsafe families. I have a friend who was first raped by her father, an MD, a university professor, when she was 3. She is still grappling with it. Her sister committed suicide. I have another friend whose stepfather, a former priest, shoved her headfirst into a snowbank when she was 6, nearly suffocating her. He then raped her when she was 11. These are women whom I happen to know well. I did not seek them out to make a point. Only over time did I learn their stories, and stories from other women too. Sexual violence, defined as sexual activity in which consent is not obtained or freely given, is widespread, affecting millions of people, most of them female, every year. That's according to the CDC. Put starkly, an American is sexually assaulted every 73 seconds. Other data show that 1 in 3 female rape victims experienced rape for the first time between 11 and 17 years of age. And 1 in 8 female rape victims reported that it occurred before age 10. Perhaps most disturbing, more than 90% of child sexual abuse victims know their attackers. In fact, 78% of perpetrators were the parents of the victim. That's according to the U.S. Department of Justice. So how did I escape? This book is that story, the story of my slow liberation, my gradual disentangling from my dangerous family. It is ultimately a story of the freeing of a soul. Thank you. Everybody's secret love affairs, their doctor conversations, their fights. It was a lot of fun. It was really, really fun. That was my first thing, and I used to watch the wire, the Associated Press and the UPI wires coming off these big machines. And I thought, this is unbelievable. News is pouring in from all over the world. If I have to die, let it be in a newsroom. I mean, it was just, it was really fun. And it was telling the truth. And my goal was to find the truth and be paid for it and have it put on the front page. That was huge, being supported to tell the truth. And I have one of my favorite pieces, which I won't read tonight, is about that mission and sort of no matter what, tell the truth. And I tell the story of the Charlie Hebdo attack in France, when that small paper published a portrait of Mohammed, sort of making fun of him. And this paper had put out cartoons making fun of Jews, making fun of Christians. It was not just an anti-Muslim thing. And they got invaded by a pair of Muslim brothers and blew up the place, and 12 people died. And they published the next week, give me goosebumps, they published the next week, and where they normally had a press run of, 50,000, they had 6 million in 45 languages. And I am getting goosebumps. I mean, that is the power of the truth, and especially in an age that we live in now with Trump, we have to tell the truth, no matter what. So that is definitely my take-home message from that.
Can you describe the pleasure you derive from writing?
Oh, wow. Well, my friend Gretchen, wherever she is, calls her kitchen her happy place. But my computer is sort of my happy place, not when I'm actually writing. It's actually fun for me. It's actually fun, but it's really fun. I guess I think in terms of stories and wanting to tell stories. But I remember when I was a younger journalist thinking, I would do this even if they didn't pay me. I mean, and that's a nice feeling to have about your work. Mm-hmm. I would say it's sort of essential. If you would do it for nothing, it's the right thing.
I'm wondering about your own grandsons, and did you have to prepare them for this memoir?
I have 2 grandsons, and Dean is asking about them. One is 21 and has just arrived in Boulder for his junior year tonight. My son is driving him. My little one is 17. It's a good question. I have not prepared them, and for better or worse, they are paying no attention to me. So later, I would, I'm not pushing this on them at all. I would wait till they're older, but they're good at the internet, so they might stumble upon it. But I don't think they're looking. So that's a good question.
I read the mystery, and then I read the memoir, and it was like a shock treatment, and it took me a while to get into it, but boy, it really was powerful, and I hope everybody here enjoys reading it as well.
Thank you very much. And on that note,
Their own truths, and in doing that, we have the ability to heal. Judy did mention as part of her book, she forgives her father. It's not
No, I actually didn't.
well, you didn't exactly
No.
forgive him, but you had that you had that conversation.
Well, let me have the last
Yes,
word on that.
I will let you know. And that is why I opened it up.
Thank you. I think forgiveness is very tricky, psychologically. You can't do violence to your own feelings or your own experience. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people to forgive as if that's going to cure everything. I mean, what I feel reminded of is in South Africa, the truth and reconciliation effort. Without truth, I don't think there can be forgiveness or should be forgiveness. So you can heal, but forgiving can be helpful to some people, but I don't think it should be forced or seen as a duty. On that note,
And on
let's
that note-
go have some wine and some books. Thank you.